I think just reconciling like perfection doesn't exist, period, in life. It definitely doesn't exist in parenthood. And that
No.
I choose what worthiness looks and feels like in my life is so, so important.
Step right up, folks. You're now entering It's a Circus, where parenting isn't always a show stopping act, but it's certainly entertaining. I'm your host, Elsa, here to prove that no one really knows what they're doing. And that's perfectly fine. Let's have some real conversations, peel back the layers, and remind you that you're never alone in the madness. Let's get the show rolling. I am so excited for this next guest. Her name is Hannah. We are related. I'm not sure how. I say I think I know how, and then Hannah says how we actually are. And at this point, all I know is that I'm so proud to be related to somebody like Hannah. Hannah is a professional makeup artist of 14 years and astrologer whose work celebrates beauty in both the physical and soulful sense. Through her artistry, she helps hundreds of clients feel confident and radiant in life's most meaningful days. And through her platform, Divine Sky Mystics, she offers the same clarity and confidence through the ancient language of astrology. Her approach is refined, intuitive, and rooted in helping others see themselves in a truer light. She has such a gift. I have gone to her for a few readings, and I am always just like absolutely astounded by her intuitive gifts, the way she crafts her language. It is absolutely a gift to the world, and it's so amazing to be in her presence and for her to share her motherhood journey here on this podcast. Although I would encourage you all to follow her astrology and, of course, her makeup artistry. And let's just get into it so you can all hear her brilliance. Here's Hannah.
Yay! Welcome, Hannah, to It's a Circus podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Elsa.
I'm so excited you're here. And I want to kick it off like I do with all of us. But what are your mamahood stats? How long have you been a mom for? And have you always wanted to be a mother?
Yeah, great question. Yes, I have always wanted to be a mom, although I was never one of those kids that loved to play mommy per se. It was just an
Mhm.
inner knowing that like motherhood would eventually be a part of my journey and I would be a mom, which I am. I have two beautiful daughters. Barrett is 11, she'll be 12 this fall, and Celia is 8. And they're at like such a fun age. Yeah.
I can't believe they're already 11 and 8.
Yeah, I know. It happens in a blink of an eye, and I'm sure that's something everyone says. It's what our parents, I'm sure, said about us, and what everyone tells you. Oh, it goes so fast, and it does. But yeah, it really does. Time has its own like concept in parenthood. It's very strange.
Oh my God. It like literally is. I know. So I want to One, I'm just so excited you're here. I just want to do like a little fangirl moment to Hannah because we are second cousins. And I don't know even how we figured it out, but we got connected. And so we have similar relatives. And
Hmm.
Hannah, watching you from afar is so amazing because I feel like a lot of our journey has had a lot of similarities and like parallels. So I am dying to get into the thick of it. Also, side note, and I know we'll get into it, I just want to say that you are a very talented astrologer. I am outside of knowing about you and just, being a fan. Seeing the work that you put out into this world is epic. And I cannot wait to dive into even more about it because I think you have such a special voice in that niche of a world. It's just amazing to watch.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
You and I are technically first cousins once removed, is my
Oh, okay, is
understanding.
that what it is? Okay. Okay.
Because our grandfathers were brothers, which makes my mom and your dad first cousins, and then the once removed
Right.
is like the generation down. Um,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
because you and I grew up in like different parts of the country, like we really never overlapped when like you would
Mhm.
come to the Midwest. I don't think it was really until like college time when you were
Yeah.
back in Minnesota. So,
Yes.
um, yeah, the timing of things is always quite interesting.
I know, and now with social media, I just get to
Right.
stalk you all the time.
Totally.
It works out for all of us.
Yes.
Um, okay, so oh, okay, and I'm also gonna say this, which might be annoying to you, but I need to say this, is your wedding photos are stunning.
Oh, thank you.
Stunning. The one, I just think a winter wedding is such a cool thing and
Mhm.
not always normal, and then the photos that go along with it is beautiful. Um, so I just wanna say that. But, like, take me back to the beginning. So, becoming a mother, was this something that that you had planned, or was this something that just happened for you guys?
Yeah. So Matt and I have been married. It'll be 14 years in January. So, and we've been together for 18, almost 18 years at this point, which, oh my God, that seems like so long. Um,
Wow.
so, you get to know someone and eventually gets to that point where you're like, you talk about these life things. You kind of dream and imagine together where your relationship is going. And for both Matt and I, we recognized that we wanted to be parents. That parenthood was a journey we wanted to experience and do together. And really, for us, it was a matter of timing. And I hate to say convenience because sometimes parenthood happens at the least convenient times and you can totally not plan for it.
Yeah.
But my husband is a pilot. And so he was often gone for long periods of time or had, training that he was prioritizing. And so our life and our schedules together were really intense. And we knew that we
Wow.
wanted to have like some years to ourselves. We wanted to kind of get into our flow and our routine.
Mhm.
Uh, Matt being active duty Air Force, we knew that there would be a lot of moves. And so that was an element that we wanted to experience first. So it wasn't until we got to California that we kind of felt like maybe now is a good time where things could be settled for a while. And um yeah, it was more like let's just see what happens. Because
Mhm.
you never know with the timeline how long it could take um
Right.
or anything like that. So I'm glad that we waited. I'm glad that we had a few years for it just to be us and to kind of work out some of those like newlywed things that, you move in with
Yeah.
someone and you start life with them
Yeah.
and, stress happens, the world happens, and you have
Mhm.
to readjust. So I think that was really good for both of us.
Oh my gosh, amazing. And then, so you've been together for a couple years, and then how does, you know, family planning work for you guys?
Yeah. Well, so I got pregnant initially when Matt graduated from pilot training. So we actually were living in Oklahoma at the time, and my
Okay.
pregnancy didn't last. So I did end up miscarrying very early on. I was not prepared for that at all. I didn't know what to
Yeah.
expect. Kind of didn't know what was happening to me until after the fact. So there was a
Ugh.
lot of like delayed, complicated grief around that because Matt was also not with me at the time. He was in training in another state. And so it felt just very like rushed of like moving through this experience. Um, and then it took us about 6 months before then we got pregnant with Barrett. And it was really just, let's see what happens. Um,
Mhm.
and so on one hand, I thought wouldn't take as long, but at the same time, I wasn't really in a rush because I when it came to parenting and the idea of parenting, even though I knew this was an experience that I wanted, I was completely unprepared for what that would look like in my life. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, we just, I remember I was maybe a week and a half late by the time I recognized that I was pregnant before I even took a test because I was
Mhm.
so in disbelief. But again, not even like being hyper aware of some of those like, maybe more obvious um symptoms that I was pregnant until after the fact. I think I just really wanted to know
Yeah.
for sure at this point, before
Sure.
my brain could kind of like, yeah, just like
Wrap it
wrap
around it.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the experience. Um,
Uh,
yeah.
well, I'm so sorry for the miscarriage that you went through, and I think it's so, um, very common and
Mhm.
so often not shared or talked about.
Yeah.
So, as you think about just the whole journey in general, some of those losses really become, really a part of the story. And for you, it sounds like it was something that you had to maybe like do a little bit alone. Can you talk about?
Yeah. I don't think I recognized the grief aspect until years later, honestly.
Wow.
I
Okay.
don't think it was until after Barrett was born that I realized, oh, I could have already had this experience with this previous pregnancy. I mean, I was just so
Mhm.
locked into like that next step of once I gotten pregnant with Barrett, like what those
Sure.
9.5 months entailed, just kind of being in the moment of like every aspect of pregnancy and watching my body change and everything being new. That it
Mhm.
wasn't until like I had my own baby and was holding my child and like recognizing that I'm in this stage of motherhood now and contrasting that to a different timeline of like, what if this previous pregnancy had turned out. Like I wouldn't be holding this girl. Maybe I would have had a boy. Maybe my
Mhm.
pregnancy would have been different. There's just a lot of what if isms that I think come up in parenting. And yeah, and on one hand, I deeply trust my body and I recognize that perhaps there was maybe something just not right with that pregnancy or that my body
Mhm.
recognized timing of it. And so that's why it didn't work out. And I know for some women, loss can be just so incredibly devastating. And I don't want to say that it wasn't sad and devastating for me, but it also, I just had this deep sense of acceptance that
Mhm.
I knew I would be a mother. It would happen.
Mhm.
And I don't want to say like there's a reason or like a greater purpose for everything, but I believe that the timeline of how things happened was, um, just how it was going to play out. So I think the sense of grief was really not something that I was deep and heavy in during my pregnancy or after the fact. It was really more of like a reflection and a recollection of just how lucky I felt to have a healthy child. And that
Wow.
was my first experience of getting pregnant. There was something that wasn't right. And
Mhm.
yeah, I just accepted that that's how it went.
Ah, wow. Well, such wise words, and thank you for sharing. And I think that that is so powerful because I think when you have grief, it's, described as like, waves come, and sometimes you don't really know when they're coming and what what a moment to be able to find even some like gratefulness within that. So that's
Mhm.
beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Um, when you got pregnant,
Mhm.
how was pregnancy for you? Like, was it something you loved? Did you feel good? Were you tired?
Oh, yeah, I was very tired. That was like one of the most predominant symptoms I had with both of my pregnancies. It was just like extreme exhaustion.
Right.
I liked pregnancy, but I didn't love it. And I would
Mhm.
say there's different stages of pregnancy that I, of course, liked one than others. Like you hit that second
Mhm.
trimester, you kind of feel like you got your energy back. For me, I had terrible, I didn't want to say morning sickness because I was sick all the time, especially at night. Um,
Oh, no.
so it was like during the day it was rough. But then past like 23 weeks, I started feeling pretty good. I will say
Mhm.
when I was pregnant with Barrett, I was also going through esthetician school. So I was in school full time and that was challenging being nauseous and like working in an environment on other people's skin and being just so
Mm.
frightened to smells and textures and everything.
Ugh.
So, um, and being exhausted and of course having to study. So that was on one hand, an interesting experience. Um, but yeah, in general, I feel like I was pretty lucky. Um, my pregnancy with both my girls, actually, both my pregnancies, I developed gestational diabetes. And so
You
that was
did.
a major curveball, yes, that I wasn't expecting. So that was something that, was a big clear around my prenatal care, having to go in, like, for NSTs and ultrasounds and, just being monitored more heavily, especially towards the ends of my pregnancy. And because neither of my girls came on their own, and with gestational diabetes, they don't want you to go too late. Both of my pregnancies were, both my girls were induced. So I just really had no idea what to expect. I'm one of those
Mhm.
people that in general likes to be prepared for all things at all times. And so
Mhm.
I like to read and feel like I'm educated about something that's new to me. So I definitely
Totally.
knew what to expect. In fact, I have a
Mhm.
very vivid memory of laying in my bed while I was pregnant with Barrett. And I had like my pregnancy pillow and I was reading like, you know, essentially like what to expect when you're expecting. It wasn't that book, but it was very much about like what to expect physically around like birth
Oh.
and the birthing
Uh-huh.
process. I just remember having this like deep fear of like, what the hell am I going to get this child out of my body?
I know.
Like, how is this possible? Like, how am I going to get through this? Like, I was just terrified. I think it was also just mentally trying to imagine how my body was going to adapt to such a profound experience. And
Mhm.
I don't think women can like you can't anticipate that until it's time. Even if you've had like multiple births. And by the time I had my second daughter, I knew what was going to happen. I knew what to expect. And still, it's like the most miraculous moment of your life of bringing a child physically into the world. Um, so yeah, there was a lot of anxiety, I think, just around what's going to happen, how is it going to happen, what am I going to have control over, what am I going to just have to like surrender to.
Oh.
Um, so yeah, I would say there was a lot of mental gymnastics that went on, especially during my first pregnancy and wanting to feel like I was doing everything right. But
Mhm.
also I didn't want to like make myself crazy either of like, just being kind of psycho about every single detail and every little thing that I was eating or drinking or, you know, coming in contact with. So um yeah, those pregnancy hormones, man.
I know. It's kinda like a whole 'nother world, and I really identify with you. I am also a researcher and, you know, the toxic trait is to do it all right and perfect and to make sure I have all the information.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, that is not the case ever in life and specifically with birth. So, that already is your big learning moment as you go through, essentially this portal of bringing life into the world.
Yeah.
And I mean, for you, you prepared, you studied, you were A plus student, you get to do an induction, which tell me about that because that feels like it may have been within a plan. So that had to have felt good. But tell me actually that story.
Yeah. So with my first, I knew that an induction was likely if she didn't come by her due date on her own. And so
Okay.
on one hand, I was like, oh, I hope she just comes on her own because if my body is just already prepared, it should make the experience less complicated and more seamless. But then on the other hand, there's part of me that was like, oh, I'm just so scared. Like, I don't want my water to break at a really inconvenient time. Like, I don't want to go into labor at an inconvenient time. Like, I want to be able to plan for this, you
Yeah,
know?
of course.
Um, so there was kind of like this back and forth about it. So I had a doctor's appointment on my due date. She hadn't come previously or like prior to. So I remember going into my OB's office for just a checkup and thinking, okay, well, maybe she'll give me a few more days. Like maybe we're just gonna like see how far it's kind of progressed and what's going on. Nope. I got in there, she checks me and she's like, well, your blood pressure's not looking great. So, and today's your due date. She's out here, he or she's out here because we didn't find out the sex of our babies. They were both surprises. Baby's not
Fine.
here yet. So we're going to send you over to labor and delivery and get this party started. And I was like, excuse me? Like, I'm not prepared for this. What do you mean it's going to happen tonight? This wasn't on my calendar. Like, I don't know. What am I going to do? Huh? So I remember calling my husband who was at work, and like, we knew this week it was likely to happen. So he did kind of like let people know, you know, don't put me on any flights. It's, I need to be available if my wife goes into labor. But I do remember calling him and saying, hey, they're sending me over to labor and delivery. Like, we're doing this essentially. We're getting this started. And he was so excited. And he went to the grocery store on his way home and bought like 2 bags of snacks of like chips and crackers and candy. Like, this is a like baseball game or something, like a spectator sport. I was so mad because I was like, I can't eat any of this. Like, this isn't, they're not gonna allow me to eat any of this. And here you are with like all of your snacks and candy and stuff. So
That is
anyway,
hilarious.
oh my God, it's such like a guy response,
It,
right?
totally,
How
totally.
can I make this fun for me? Yeah. So they did send me over to labor and delivery. They got me um kind of checked in and started. Then I was able to go home for a few hours and shower and like get all my stuff together. And like eat a good meal, and then was sent back to labor and delivery at like 8 o'clock that night. And then got
Okay.
hooked up to, IVs and stuff. So yeah, it was very quick in regards to getting the process moving, I suppose. And it was a surprise. But on the other hand, I look back and I'm like, come on, I knew this was a likely possibility. I think there was just a lot of denial and fear around like what
Of course.
this experience is going to be like. So
Oh man. Okay, so, coming into something like that with a little bit of anxiety, did you have a birth plan?
yeah, no set birth plan other than doing everything possible to bring this child in a healthy way. Because I was
Okay.
high risk, I knew that I would have additional doctors in the room with me. I knew that they would be monitoring me. Of course, induction increases your risk of possible C-section, which I was
Yeah.
okay with. Um, yeah, I felt for someone who is a very type A person and likes to be in control of everything, I was oddly fluid with how the birth plan per se was going to go. I just really
Mhm.
felt focused on, I want to make sure that baby is in good hands and that their experience being brought into life is as supported and healthy as possible. And same with my health. Like, there was no
Mhm.
other thing. And I
Right.
trusted my doctors. Um, Induction, again, I didn't know what to experience. I did take prenatal classes. So
Mhm.
I did kind of know like what things that I could do to help myself. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, it took longer than I think I thought. So I was in labor with 36 hours. Like, my body just was not super excited about like getting there to a 10. Um, so yeah, it was a very long labor process. The
That is
other
long.
thing with this particular induction is that my um I did get an epidural, but it was not successful. So
Oh.
that was really hard because I was in so much pain. And so because I was in so much pain, I think it really like it just my body was unable to relax. And I was so tired at this point too.
Mhm. My
Um,
God.
so I could just feel everything on one side of my body. They were able to come back in and take it out and kind of readjust um the epidural, which helped, but I was at a 9 at this point. They're really, it was just kind of taking the edge off. And I did want to take pain medication.
Uh-huh.
To the point I was just like, I want to get her or him out. So it
Uh-huh.
was very fast. I do remember when Barrett was born, as soon as she came out crying and her eyes were
Mm.
wide open and she was just so alert and looking around the room. And I remember watching her little hands like grabbing at the nurse's watch. And it's like she was just
Wow.
so impatient. She's like, I have been waiting to be out here for a while. What has taken so long? She was just so ready to like get air in her lungs and to just be here.
Wow.
And even as a child now, I see that energy in her where she's excited about waking up every morning. Like she's our early riser.
Mhm.
She is always about like, what are we doing next? What's our next experience? Um,
Oh
yeah,
my
and I
God,
remember
cute.
holding her and looking at her feet, and my like first impression of her was like, number one, oh my gosh, of course, here you are. Like, of course, this is what you look like. And it was a surprise that it was a girl, but deep down, I always knew I was going to have girls. So I
Mm,
wasn't. Um,
mm.
then I looked at her little feet and I was like, oh, these are men's toes. Like, it's so interesting. The little things that you notice about your child that are either
Yeah.
particular to you or so particular to your partner. And yeah, that was just like my impression, just like, oh my gosh, yes, there is this sense of recognition with this child.
Mm,
Um, like I feel like I already knew her, and then also
mm.
like looking at her features and thinking, well, of course that's what you look like, and like that you have your dad's tones, and that you kind of have like your hair kind of looks like mine. Like, it was just so otherworldly in that moment. Yeah, both moments when my children were born, I literally play over and over in my head. Like I would relive those few moments forever if I could, because it just is like the closest experience I think I can think of to something completely divine and otherworldly.
Ah, Hannah, I mean, literally that like brings me to tears because I so identify with that. And to even for you just to say, to relive those moments, I mean, even thinking about my own moments, it's such a miracle and it
Mhm.
is so fleeting
Yeah.
and so sacred.
Yes, totally.
Wow. So tell me why you guys didn't find out the sex. I think that's so unique. I don't think that's very common. And were you deep down you felt that it was a girl?
Mhm.
But tell me more about that decision making process.
Yeah. So as I mentioned previously, Matt is in the Air Force. And so
Yeah.
so much of our life details are not decided by us, where we move, where we live, when we move. Um, so I both of us felt like this is one experience that no one gets to dictate for us, that it can just be a
Mm.
completely um open mystery. And really that's how all of it felt. It was like this incredible mystery and surprise. So that was
Mhm.
really the desire for both of us, and we got a lot of flack. Like, how are you going to plan a nursery if you don't know what it's a girl or boy? And I think people are more open to like this gender neutral experience with babies, and like
Yeah.
babies will need so little, right? They don't need a lot of things before they're born.
Right.
But yeah, that was just one of those things where we were so in tandem around letting it be a mystery and just letting it be a surprise and looking forward to that. Um, but yeah, deep down, I always knew I was going to have girls. It was just this feeling I had, and certainly while I was pregnant, I always felt like it was a girl. And you get feedback from people of how you're carrying,
Right.
the old wives' tales, and lots of people thought I was having a boy, but man, I knew it was a girl. I would have been shocked had
Mm.
I hadn't.
Oh, so special. Um, ugh, I love that. So you were in school too, then at the
Mhm.
same time.
Yeah.
And talk to me about well, one, you are a makeup artist, too. And talk to me about just kind of your decision process around that and why that was like timing and something you wanted to do.
Yeah. So I was in esthetician school when we lived in California. And I, so prior to meeting Matt, like I had graduated college, I was
Hmm.
working in Minneapolis in development and corporate development. And my degree's in communications. And I imagined that at some point I would go to business school, maybe get my MBA or master's in marketing. and I had looked at master's programs. But when I moved out of Minneapolis with Matt, and we started our life together, I quickly realized, number one, I hate working in an office. I am not someone that is
Mhm.
I general sales slowdowns. I am really not interested in working in a big group of people. It's just not my strength. Um,
Mhm.
and I just really felt quite confused at that stage in my life around like where my path was leading me and what I was supposed to do. And I wasn't interested in taking a job just for the sake of a paycheck either, which sometimes you have to do. Um,
Mhm.
but it was really hard to kind of gain any career progression and traction when you're moving every year, 2 years, 3 years. So
Totally.
I've always been interested in beauty and skincare, a lot of it from like a very scientific perception, like
Mhm.
skincare in terms of ingredients and formulations. And then, my mom's an artist, my sister is an artist. I grew up around doing a lot of music and doing a lot of
Mhm.
art myself. And so I just needed to have some kind of a creative outlet. So I wasn't necessarily set on like, okay, I'm going to get my esthetician's license and then I'm going to do this and then I was going to do that. It was more like, let's just see what this learning experience opens up for me. Like, I am a eternal student. I love being in a classroom setting. I love learning new things. And so esthetician school for me was like such a delight because it was
Yeah.
in all of this stuff that I just really craved to understand. I was also probably a decade older than most of my classmates who had just
I'm
like
sure.
graduated high school. And here I am, 30 years old. But it was great. Like I felt like kind of like the mother hen in my class. And again, it was fun to be a student again. It was fun to be a novice about something. And
Yeah.
um, yeah, I found out I was pregnant. It was about halfway through my my program, that I found out I was pregnant. So, it was pretty early on. Yeah, because I remember graduating school and like I had a little baby bump, but I wasn't like super, super pregnant at that point either. Um, yeah, and in hindsight now, like thinking about my journey with motherhood, owning my own business and being a makeup artist, which I've done now for nearly 14 years,
Wow.
has allowed me to be so participatory in my girls' lives and at all
You're right.
stages of life. And I mean, had you asked me when I was in college if I ever expected that I would be home with my kids for any portion of time, I would have told you they're crazy because it's never been a desire of mine. And,
Mhm.
I grew up in a house where like my mom worked 50, 60 hours a week at times. She owned her own business. She was, the OG boss babe. And I kind of figured like that would be my life too, that I wasn't really interested in being at home with my kids. So,
Mhm.
you know, on one hand, yes, esthetician school and then going into makeup artistry after I apprenticed with another artist when I was working in California, that was a choice. But how things kind of precipitated out from that in terms of, moving and Matt's job and his deployments and having another child, all of that had to be kind of fit together like a puzzle around my business and my work as well. So a lot of juggling and adapting.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, share because I think when it's like you start with that new career, you're a new mom, you have an unknown around like where you will be living. And it sounds like, your partner is like in and out. Tell me about that. Like as postpartum, as
Yeah, those were tough years, honestly.
yeah.
Those were very tough years. We lived in California, which is far away from my family. My parents are
Mhm.
in Minnesota, where I grew up
Mhm.
in the cities. My sister was kind of all over the place. Actually, my sister was in graduate school in North Carolina. So, Matt's parents were in Connecticut. Like, we weren't close to anyone that could really help us. My grandmother lived in Sacramento where we lived, but she was in her 80s. So
Right.
as much as we got to spend time with her, she wasn't, actively watching or helping with baby stuff. Um,
Right.
so yeah, that first year that after Barrett was born, postpartum is something that they warn you about and that they did
Mhm.
warn me about like in my prenatal classes. But in my mind, I was like, oh, I'm gonna know if I'm going to the deep end. Like
Oh,
I'm
man.
I'm
Okay.
gonna know if things are not good for me.
Right.
Um yeah, spoiler alert, I had terrible postpartum anxiety and
Uh,
depression. And
yeah.
it was not super aware to me that that was my experience. So
Mhm.
after Bear was born in October of 2013, and she was a difficult baby, if I'm being completely candid.
Ooh,
She was very
tell me everything.
um she was very difficult to put down. She was awake all the time. She did not
Okay.
want to eat a lot. She was like a snacker. So I was breastfeeding,
Oh,
um, and pumping, and I just felt like I remember bringing her home, and I was so exhausted. And I remember having this moment of panic of like, I'm not going to be able to leave my house without finding childcare or someone to watch my child. Like, I'm never going to be able to just leave my house again for like over a decade now. I'm going to
right.
always need to find someone. I can't just like leave on a whim.
Uh,
And for some reason, that incited so much panic in me, almost like this feeling of
mm,
claustrophobia of like my freedom is gone.
uh,
Even though I was so grateful to have this beautiful baby, but
yeah.
she was not a great sleeper. Um, And that's just her like hard wiring. Like even now, she's still
Right.
an early riser. She can stay up really late. She's restless at night. That is just who she is. But it was,
Mhm.
more so exhausted that first year, everything just feels horrible when you're tired. I mean, this is like something I even tell my children now is like our feelings feel bigger when we are tired. And like that is
Yeah.
something I wish someone told me when I was a new mom and prior to having kids is that, yeah, things are really hard, but they're going to feel monumentally harder when you are tired and you are exhausted.
Mhm.
And that's not a reflection of like your ability or your worthiness as a mom, but it's going to be really, it's going to feel heavy because you haven't slept for days. And you have a baby that's constantly crying, and that's inciting this primal response in you that you have no control over. I mean, I remember feeling this constriction in my body when she would start crying and just feeling like I knew I had to respond, but I was just like, oh, like like I wanted quiet. Like I forgot what quiet sounded. Um, so that was really hard. And I remember when Matt went back to work, he only had a week off after she was born.
Oh,
And
no.
I remember once he went back to work, like I would literally count the hours on the clock until he would come home and the minutes until he would walk in the door until I just had someone else there with me because it just felt some days insurmountable. Like, how was I going to fill my time just kind of repetitively feeding and changing and rocking this baby over and over and over? Um, and then Matt deployed to Afghanistan in January of 2014 when Barrett was 3 months old.
Oh
And
my gosh.
that was really, really for both of us. On one
Yeah.
hand, you know, Matt missed out in the first, you know, 6 months, 8 months of her life. I mean, after she was about 3 months old, those 6 months. And then again, my mom was in Minnesota, so I didn't have someone that could just come over and help. And yeah, that's I think when my postpartum depression, anxiety really sat and sink in. It was like after the third or fourth month. And Barrett wasn't sleeping and every milestone was new. It was like introducing food and then it was, her sitting up and then her, getting into things and crawling and so exciting and like incredible to watch your child literally grow overnight, but also having this deep sense of sadness of like, her dad's not here to witness this. Her dad's not here to share this and this excitement with me. Her dad's not here to take her for an hour so I can get a nap in. And I remember just calling my mom sometimes in the middle of the night, just being like, I don't know how I can do this. I don't know how to do this. She won't stop crying. She won't go to sleep. Like I literally felt like I just wanted to jump off a bridge. I mean, I hate to say that, but there were days where it was like, I didn't know what else to do. I felt so despondent. And my mom came out many times to help me, and I'm so, so grateful for that. But, you're trying to navigate motherhood. And again, I'm the eldest daughter. I'm
Yeah.
very type A. I want to do it the right way. I want to do
Yep.
things the right way for my child, for myself. I want to feel like I'm a good mother. And I didn't necessarily feel like I was a great mom, despite everyone telling me you're doing great. You're doing fantastic. Well, then why don't I feel like I'm doing fantastic? You know?
Ugh.
So yeah, it was complicated. I think it would have been just as challenging had Matt been home. But again, you only know what
Mhm.
you know from experience. Like moms that have twins or multiples, like if that's your
Right.
first experience with motherhood, that's your normal. That's your
Mhm.
entry to motherhood. So that
Mhm.
was really hard. We got through it. Matt came home and um, we moved on to another journey. But yeah, that first year being a mom was um, raw. I mean, just really mentally, physically, emotionally exhausting taxing. It's hard.
Whoa. It's so hard. And Hannah, like, thank you for being so candid with your like the sharing of your feelings because literally as you were talking, I was like getting goosebumps because that those feelings are so real and so raw and
Yeah.
you may be feeling those like 100% of the time in addition to having moments of awe in front of your child in addition to having being grateful that you brought life into this world but that like deep deep you know I don't even know how to say it because it's so complex, but, like, those deep feelings of all the things is so real. I mean, oh my goodness. Alone is, like, superhuman strength. So, you had your mom come and visit, but was there any other support that you sought during that, like, first year to either help you kind of move through this or even just, like, physical support so you could take a shower or something.
Yeah. There were a handful of my friends that had had children previously that I did reach out to. And,
Mhm.
there were other women and moms within our squadron whose husbands were also deployed that I felt like, I could kind of
Oh,
lean on
sure.
to. So there was a lot of like that kind of communal motherhood collective support. But I will say that there's always this message that's pushed to moms about like reach out and ask for help and community is going to be what saves you. Yes, absolutely. I 100% support that message. But when you are in the thick of it, it can be really, really hard to even know what you're asking for, to know what you need,
Yes.
And so I think we have to rethink how we encourage moms to think about what health actually looks and feels like. Um, so yeah, I think I appreciated those that checked in on me. Our squadron set up like a meal train. So people came with the first couple of weeks after Barrett was born and brought me a meal. Um, honestly, the best thing for me was getting out of the house with my daughter and
Mhm.
going for walks, getting in the car,
Mhm.
going to Target, like doing normal things and kind of reintegrating into society with a child, which on one hand was completely nerve wracking. And
Yeah.
yet it was also like the greatest, um, those were the experiences that I think really helped motherhood become embodied into me. Where it was like I was having
Mhm.
to problem solve on the fly instead of just like sitting in my house and worrying about like endless scenarios and possibilities of things that felt heavy or scary or like
Mhm.
possible. Um,
Mhm.
like I remember very vividly one time going to Target with Barrett. And granted, when we lived in California, We lived about 40 minutes outside of the Sacramento area. So we had to have a little bit of a
Mhm.
drive to get into town to where the nearest Target was. And so it was nice to like get in the car and drive someplace and again be in a metro area where there's like people and places to eat and stores and shopping. And I remember putting her in her like little infant car seat into her stroller and she was like happy and whatever and she was asleep and I was able to walk around Target and shop and I felt like a normal person. She was probably about like 6, 7 months at this time. And
Mhm.
then as I'm walking around, I hear the sound, the sound of my child filling up her diaper. And we're like, okay, do I have my diapers? Do I have my wipes? No, I don't. I completely forgot to bring them. And Barrett had like just exploded up the back of her onesie and it was all over the place. And oh my God, I was so embarrassed and I didn't know what to do. So like I had to buy her a completely new outfit
Of
and
course.
like well, I'm at Target. Like this is the place for it to happen. But it's things like that where it felt like this is my quest. This is my parenthood quest that I need to ace right now. What am I gonna do?
Uh,
And now
yeah.
as a 40-year-old middle-aged woman, I look back and I'm like, it's not a big deal. But it was a
Yeah.
big deal in the moment. It was like so terrifying. But it was those experiences, I think, being out in public, being out in the social realm where those like curveballs would be thrown at you that you just have to adapt to that really helped to instill my sense of confidence and independence
Mm.
as a
Mhm.
mom that was capable. Even if I always
Ugh.
did, if I didn't ever feel necessarily like I'm number one mom, like I'm a great mom, I at least felt somewhat capable of being able to keep.
Right.
And over time, I think that idea of capability changes into confidence, changes into worthiness. But
Mm.
certainly with your first, it's so much that's new and uh, just feel of like, okay, well, we're just either gonna figure out how to do this or I'm gonna ask someone, did your kid do this? Like, how did you manage this? Whatever. You
Yeah.
learn tricks throughout, your time. You can kind of like put in your back pocket that you can rely on. But yeah, a lot of learning on the fly for sure.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I love all of that. Um, Tell me about when you guys decided it was time for number 2.
Yeah. So so I always wanted kids a little, oops, so I guess I should say my daughters are three
Yeah.
and a half years apart,
Mhm.
almost exactly. We wanted them closer in age, but
Mhm.
when Barrett was about 15 months old, we moved from California to Louisiana, where we would be for about 5 years. And Matt was going through a different program, finding different everything at that time. It was also requiring a lot of him, also lots of deployments. So
Ugh.
that window of being able to kind of try to plan another pregnancy where he would be available because it was important to him, important to both of us after our experience with Barrett and that deployment that he wanted to be around the second time this happened to be able to have those experiences of watching your child go through the first year and like all of those milestones. He wanted to be able to experience that. So there was
Wow.
definitely some planning involved. And like I said, I think everything worked out great time wise. Like I wouldn't change their age gap now. But at the time, we really wanted them closer in age. And I remember crying about that, just feeling like, when is it ever going to be our choice? Like when is life going to allow
Mm.
us to make some choices about when this is going to happen? Like why is it always on the Air Force's time? Why is it always about what the military is prioritizing? And feeling just a lot of resentment, not at Matt, but just at like larger systems at play here. Um,
Right.
so we got to a point where it was like, well, we're tired of waiting around. There's never going to be a convenient time. And I think a lot of parents feel this with their life too, because regardless if your spouse is in the military, it sometimes it isn't convenient and you just you have to prioritize like what's next for us. So
Right.
we did look at, Matt was in between deployments. We knew he had another one coming up where he would be gone for 6 months. And so it was a matter of hopefully trying to get pregnant before he left so that by the time he came home, he would be home for the birth of the baby and then be able to stay put for that
Okay.
first year. So getting pregnant with Celia was honestly a matter of tracking my cycles. And then Matt was going to be in Las Vegas for a month for work for some training that he was doing prior to this particular deployment. And we hadn't gotten pregnant by that point. And I remember thinking, this is our last shot before he deploys for me to get pregnant. And so I was like tracking my ovulation like a psycho with like everything down to the date. And I was looking at a calendar and I was like, all right, I've got this weekend that I'm ovulating. And if I can find someone to stay with Barrett, like a friend of mine who had a son the same age, um, offered to watch her for the weekend so I could fly out to see Matt in Vegas. And that's literally what happened. I drove out to
Wow.
Dublin, spent some time with my really good friend at the time. And Barrett spent the weekend there with her auntie, and I flew out to Las Vegas for 3 days, just fun with Matt. And yeah, I knew like within 2 weeks that I was pregnant. Like I knew
Wow.
before being back from um his training in Vegas that I was pregnant. And it was just one of those things where like, okay, I know it. I know that I'm pregnant. I could feel it in my body. And I actually remember looking up online, like, is it too early? Can you know you're pregnant after 2 weeks? Because I just
Mhm.
knew. But yeah, that
Mhm.
was literally what happened. Vegas baby. And it worked out. I was pregnant while he was deployed. He came home about 3 weeks before Celia was born. And he was
Wow.
first year before he had to move again. So very grateful that it worked out that way. Very serendipitous for sure.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so he was gone the whole pregnancy though?
Um, most of it, yes. So he came home
Yeah.
from Vegas, was back for about 6 weeks, and then or just under 6 weeks before he left, and then was
Mm.
so yeah.
Oh my gosh. And
It was rough. Anyone
oh,
with multiples knows when you're pregnant and you've got a toddler or another child that needs you or a baby, it is when you think you're tired with your first, by the time you have your
yeah.
second, you're pregnant with your second. I was like, there were days I just couldn't get off the couch. And I remember calling friends and being like, can you come and take Barrett for a few hours? Because I just
Mhm.
can't do anything. And I was so,
Mhm.
so sick during my second pregnancy with Celia that I had to take Phenagrin, the patches and like the
Mm.
gel put on your wrist.
Yep.
And I couldn't drive because it made me feel so like out of it and loopy, but I was just so, so sick. So that
Oh
was
my
rough,
gosh.
just feeling horrible. And then also trying to find things to do with my 2.5-year-old. Um, and I was potty training Barrett at the time too. So it was busy. It was very busy. Um, you know, those yeah, I remember that Christmas we went back to Minnesota and I was with my parents, and I remember just thinking like this is our last Christmas without a second child. Like next Christmas it'll be the four of us, which was so weird to imagine. And
Mhm.
after you have one kid, you kind of assume like, okay, well my second's probably going to be somewhat like them. But as you know, having
Mhm.
two boys, like two children can be from the same genetic, like two components and be nothing alike, or just their experiences are
Totally.
so different. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's been the case for my girls. Although, like I said, both pregnancies I had gestational diabetes, and so I knew that I was likely to be induced. Um, Celia was a big baby, and so she was induced about 3.5 weeks early. So
Whoa.
yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and even at 3.5 weeks, she was 8 pounds 8 ounces. So when
That,
she went to her due
oh
date, she
my
was a huge baby.
sh- She would have been at least 10 pounds. That's
easily.
crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, and then how was that birth?
Yeah. So Celia came much faster. Yeah, it was like less than 24 hours. And Celia
Nice.
was, yeah, I felt much more prepared and calm,
Yeah.
knowing what to
Mhm.
expect the second time
Mhm.
around. So that was great. Celia was born in Louisiana, so it was a different hospital, but I loved this particular OB that I had. She was wonderful. I felt like she really advocated for me. She was a good listener. I was
Mm.
excited to deliver with her, and I was
Wow.
really grateful because her family, she was taking her family to Disney World like a couple of days later. So I was like, if we're getting induced, like you have to be here. Like this baby has to come before your vacation. um, so yeah, the induction was fine. My epidural worked this time. So I was like, oh, this is what it's supposed to feel like. You're supposed to feel no
Yeah.
pain, which is
Mhm.
great. But Celia was born sunny side up. So that
Oh,
was,
interesting.
yeah, so that was crazy. I remember like, I don't know, I was probably at like a 7. They'd broken my water and everything. And I remember just laying there thinking like, I really have to poop and it hurts. I'm like, this is, well, I can't get up. Like they're not gonna let me get up. Um, and
You
so
gotta poop right there.
I was like, it's horrible. Like, oh, this like, I thought I was cleared out and everything before, like all the stuff that they give you before. So yeah, I could
Right.
feel it in my back and my tailbone. And it was really, really
Oh, no.
painful. And so I called my nurse and my nurses came in and, they're feeling around and they're like, oh, she's sunny side up. Her head is, I can feel her face. So that was that like, because she's not in the right position. She's pushing on the,
Yes.
anterior part of my spine. So they had me like on some different, from side to side in positions to try to get her to turn. And that is so yeah, the last like 3 centimeters, she went really, really fast and they were able to turn her right as she was coming out. Um,
Wow.
so yeah, I remember holding her and she's very like sleepy baby when she came out compared to Barrett. He had like eyes wide open and grasping at the world and was like so impatient about just being here in her body. And Celia
Yeah.
and was just like sleepy eye blinks, just very observant, just kind of like looking around the room. And I remember looking at her, just feeling like, this is so weird. Like, you don't look like Spirit. Like, what? It was just such a mind trick, even more so than having my
Mhm.
first child. This idea that, like, I had 2 kids was
Yeah.
so weird to me. And just thinking, like, who are you? Like, who are you going to be? I mean, you just seem
Mhm.
so different from your sister. Like, your energy is so different. And she came out
Mhm.
with like, dark black hair. She had so much hair. Um, yeah, so she was just like a very, and she's big. Barrett was a pretty average size baby. She was very, very different. But I was really excited for Barrett to get to like meet her, and my mom had come in
Yeah.
into the home to stay with Barrett. So yeah, it was pretty. It was that just that feeling of like our family's complete for sure. Once
Yeah.
Celia was there too. Um, and also being like a sister, it's just me and my sister, seeing the two of them and
Mhm.
just saying like what life could be like to have a sister felt really
Mhm.
amazing and powerful. So,
Mm.
yeah, Celia's birth was in a lot of ways much easier. And I think some of that was just like mental preparedness.
Wow. So did you approach with how you experienced postpartum?
Yes, I knew what to ask for. And I will say with
Okay.
Celia, she was very easy to nurse and breastfeed. She was
Oh,
just great at doing that on her
amazing.
own. So that made it a lot easier. Um, I was really encouraged after, when I went in at my 6 week appointment to get an IUD because I wasn't, we weren't 100% sure
Oh.
about whether or not we would have another
Mhm.
child. I didn't want to be on birth control pills. And so I was like, okay, well, this seems like the route to go to get an IUD put in. Like if it's really common that women will get them when they go in for their
Mhm.
appointment at 6 weeks. So that's what I did. And I was told that there weren't a lot of side effects and yeah, that it would be an ideal situation for me. But like within 48 hours, I felt horrible. I felt,
Yep. Yep.
I just
Ugh.
felt, yeah, horrible. I cried all the time. I felt completely
Hmm.
manic. I felt out of
Oh.
control. I felt suicidal. It was scary. It was
Oh.
really scary. And Matt was even like, are you, you don't seem okay. Like, what can we do? And so I called my OB and was like, we need to get this taken out. Like, I lasted about a month and I was like, I can't do this. Like,
Mm-mm.
can't mentally do this. I don't know what is going on, but I cannot manage this. Um, and my nurse that I talked to was, she's like, okay, well, we'll talk to your OB. Like, this is normally there aren't any side effects to
Of course.
this medication. I knew that I was likely to have postpartum depression anxiety because I had it with my first. Yes, on one hand, there is a genetic kind of wiring that I knew that I probably have that again, but this was even
Mhm.
worse. Because Matt was there, I had help. Like life didn't seem as manic previously, but just emotionally, I was not good. I was not doing well. So I
Mm.
felt like I really had to advocate to get to out, which is wild to me because like why do you want me to have this in me if it's not
I
making me
know.
feel good? And I felt like I had to try to over explain that like these additional hormones were just really causing a lot of strife and like not helping my mental health. So they did take it out. But I'm serious, like within 24 hours or 48 hours, I felt so much better. Um, and then
S-
later I did get put on Mexico as well. So,
Mhm. Yep.
that was a night and day difference for me as well. Just having the kind of the baseline support of some medication. But yeah, that was hard. Feeling like on one hand, like this should be fine. Millions of women use this product and it's fine. And I'm someone that believes in science and like I have no problem with
Right.
taking medication if it's necessary, but this just was not good for me. So yeah, I did it as long as I could. But it wasn't the right fit.
Ugh. And the fact that you have to advocate for yourself and the fact that they keep, like, trying to explain to you that it's not that
The
that's not
defense,
the issue.
right?
Ugh.
Yeah,
And, I mean, thank goodness you had awareness because you had gone through it before, but what if you didn't have awareness and you were
right.
already in that, really negative space? Like, how how frustrating.
Yeah, yeah,
Ugh.
absolutely. I think I recognize too that when Matt pointed out, like, you're not well, like, you're not okay, I'm
Yeah.
worried about you. There was something in my head that was like, you need to listen to that. Like, if your partner's recognizing
Wow.
that you're not well, and he didn't minimize any of my experience. Like, he could see how hard it was. He could see how exhausting it was.
Right.
And Matt is like an amazing hands-on dad, feeding the baby, changing the baby, taking the baby.
Mhm.
It's both kids, so I could get rested. Amazing,
Mhm.
amazing support. So for my support system to also recognize that this seems like this isn't good for you, um, I think was a light bulb for me where it's like, you can't, if someone else on the outside is recognizing you're not well. So if you're not feeling well, other people see that you're not well. Something has to change. So
Oh,
that
man,
felt a lot
Hannah.
easier again to have someone on my side to feel like this is the right decision.
Yeah. You know, uh, I just wanna, like, thank you for sharing and honoring that because I think there is a type of person I feel very as you describe some of what you are saying, I feel very much the same way. And I think that type of personality going into motherhood and just being, slapped in the face with, like, the absolute chaos and mess and insane insanity of it all. I mean, getting through that and, still kind of having to seek out support, I mean, that's so important. The message of just saying, like, you can't do it by yourself, everyone struggles, there's an adjustment period. I mean, can that be the narrative?
Absolutely. Even when like it's going to be hard, I knew it was going to be
Yes.
hard. By the
Yes.
time you're second, it's going to be exhausting. It's going to be challenging. Kind of previously what you've had, even if you've had a great first experience, there are certain things that you can anticipate with just having a baby in general. Um,
Right.
but that still doesn't fully prepare you, like
No.
internally, of like what you feel around
Mm.
how you're showing up and how you're supposed to mother. Um, yeah, I think that was I've always been someone that's been really hard. It's been hard for me to accept help. So I think at that point, like I had experienced so much challenge, just with like both my pregnancies and like not being away for so long too, that I was so exhausted. I think just from all of these seasons and cycles of having to do things on my own, that I was like, you know what? Absolutely. I need the support. I need the help. Um,
Ugh.
because Matt was going to be leaving again anyway. So you know, what it wasn't helping them. Uh,
Mm-mm. Oh my gosh. Wow. Um, I mean, seriously, superhuman strength, incredible. How has motherhood shaped, kind of the trajectory of what you put out into the world? And I kind of started it this way because, again, from what I know of you and my personal experience with you, I am obsessed and think you're superior and the absolute best. But, um, and then when I look at your stuff compared to some other things, I'm just like, she's on fire. This is like the absolute creme de la creme of all the things. How did astrology fall into your lap? And then what is,
yeah. Oh gosh. Well, that can take up a whole hour in itself.
I
Um,
know.
Let me think. How do I want to start this? Well, I guess astrology is something I've always been curious, interested
Yeah.
in. I mean, we grew up, Elsa, at a time of like 17 YM magazines. If you flip through it, you read about your sun sign and like,
Yes.
horoscopes, the back of the magazine, and like,
Yes.
so fun, right? So fun. Like,
Yes.
top astrology. So I was super into that.
Yes.
Um, but I would say, like, throughout the course of my life, I've always been very connected to feelings of like exploring different realm of spirituality. I grew up in a Christian household. Like, I was confirmed in the Episcopal Church. I went to a Lutheran college. I wouldn't ever consider myself particularly a religious person per se, but I
Hmm.
had lots of religious experiences and kind of pillars in my life that kind of framed my experience of what and how I thought God was. As I
Mm.
kind of stepped into motherhood, I feel like my perception of God and how spirit kind of works through us, works through me, works through my children, just completely expanded. Um, and
Mm.
it's really fascinating because I think, there's research that has shown that millennials are leaving the church at a very high rate. And this is a completely other topic that I could spend hours talking about millennial
Love it.
parents in general,
Oh,
compared to
okay.
their boomer parents. And there's definitely astrology that kind of supports this, but there's also cultural and social reasons for this.
Hmm.
But our parents grew up in a time where they were expected to do things out of obligation. That if an authority
Hmm.
figure tells you to do something or something is true, that you respect them, you don't question them, and
Right.
that you should be grateful for whatever
Hmm.
happens in your life, and that you have to work really hard for good things to happen to you. And that's because their
Hmm.
parents or grandparents grew up during the Great Depression, and that was
Hmm.
definitely the case. And then you get to our generation of millennials, where like a lot of us are dealing with constant trauma of like the world kind of going through this rapid destabilization, 9/11, world wars, all of this stuff,
Yes.
economic collapse, student loans, all of these things. And yet we're also the parents that I think parent more equally between
Hmm.
two partners than any generation
Yes.
has previously, right? Dads,
Yes.
millennial dads are definitely more the most involved father.
Mhm.
Uh, anyway, so all of that is to say that I think when I got into my 30s and I was in the throes of motherhood, or at least new motherhood, I really felt myself leaving a lot of that kind of constructed, structured viewpoint of, for one, how the world was supposed to look and feel, how motherhood and parenthood was supposed to look and feel, and also how, like, my experience of the unknown, which is what I kind of just called it at the time, was how I labeled them. And I mean, I was
Wow.
a child that from a very young age could sense energy, could feel things, could
Mhm.
hear things, could see things in my
Mhm.
mind. So I was always very aware of the spirit realm, and it scared me, but it also like intrigued me. That's something that's always kind of like worked around in the background of my life and has been an interesting theme. But the astrology piece came in of just simply being curious and wanting to learn more. It wasn't
Mhm.
an adoption of like, okay, I'm no longer part of the church. And so now I'm adopting
Right.
astrology as my new religion or spiritual um construct. It was really more of an interest kind of historically of like, where did this come from? And like, why do the planets have particular significations? And like, where did the mythology come from and all the stories of the zodiac signs? And like, how does
Mhm.
that connect to the constellations in the sky? So there's just a lot of like curiosity that unfolded for
Mhm.
me. And honestly, I
Mhm.
feel like being a parent and being a mother, curiosity, I think, has led me to my greatest successes as being a
Wow.
mom, is being open minded, is being curious, asking questions. And so astrology continued to give me things to ask questions about and to
Right.
do a lot of that inner work around, why do I do the things that I do? Why is this pattern
Mhm.
coming up for me? Why do I feel so triggered or frustrated by, this thing that my partner does or that my mom does or whatever? So there's a lot of like
Mhm.
inner reflection and unpacking that I think very much coincides with a lot of people's experience of becoming a parent and having your own children.
Mhm.
Um,
Totally.
but my outlet was astrology. So that's
Cool.
kind of where it started for me. Yeah. And then in terms of work, um, my makeup work that started back in 2012, 2011. After I graduated aesthetic school, I um, apprenticed with a makeup artist that worked in Sacramento and out of the Bay Area. So I had a pretty good
Oh,
first
yeah.
experience of what it would be like to work as a working artist and to help temper my
Mhm.
expectations of what running my own business in this industry would look like. So I was
Mhm.
able to take my business with me to the different places that we moved and establish community, establish networks, which of
Mhm.
course was challenging every time we moved, but
Of course.
something I really thrived on because for me, makeup and like the artistry of it never had anything to do with me being a mother. It never had
Mhm.
anything to do with me being a military spouse. It had nothing to
Mhm.
do, I don't know, it had nothing to do with anything other than my own desire to create and
Mm.
then to work with people. And that's still the case,
I
is
love
I
that.
feel like my makeup work is just for me, even though I
Mhm.
offer a service to my clients. It is something that is deeply fulfilling and a personal extension
Yes.
of me. And I think that is something that I recognize as such a lifeline. It has continued to be a
Mhm.
lifeline through every aspect of my life. And um that is something that I can return to. And I'm very, very cognizant about not overwhelming myself with work either, finding what a good work life balance looks like for me, because I never want to feel resentful or burnt out by my work, which is very
Yeah.
easy to do in the beauty world and in the
Yep.
wedding industry in general. So it's
Totally.
something I'm really protective about, is like my boundaries with my clients, but also how much work I'm taking on. So
Mhm.
it's great because I'm able to work so much of my schedule around my husband's schedule, my kids. Like I said, I got to be home a lot, to be available to go
Mhm.
to field trips and to pick them up, to take them places, and to just to general to be that person for them. who sees them at the end of the day when they come home from school. Um, but I also then have work that, again, has nothing to do with me being a mother. It helps me to remember that, yes, I am a mother, but I am also a professional,
Yeah.
also an
Right.
artist. I am also a student. I am all these other
Mm.
things. I think, especially for young moms, it can feel really hard to suddenly feel like your only identity that society recognizes you for is the one that is related to being a mom. And that
Mhm.
that's what we should feel the best about. That's the one that we should feel the most proud of. And I don't necessarily agree. I am so proud to be a mom of two incredible daughters, capable, smart, funny, um, talented kids. And I feel really proud of the type of mom that I am becoming and continue to be. But I'm also really proud of my professional success. I am proud of the type of partner that I am to my husband. I am proud of a lot of things in my life that have nothing to do with being a mom. And I want to be equally recognized for those aspects of my strength and worthiness outside of just how I care for my children.
That.
Yeah, I think having to redefine what a lot of those things mean in life has
Mhm.
been
Mhm.
important. I think a lot of us do that maybe without having to consciously recognize that. Um, but having to redefine what success looks like, what success feels like in life is really important. I think remembering that parenthood, while a big part of your life and a big part of your life's work and legacy, is not the be all end all of who you are and who you get to be and who you continue
Mm.
to get to be. Um, for me, that idea of worthiness had to change too, because when you're growing up and you're like, you're in school and then you come out into the world in your 20s, you're being compared to, this idea of success has to do with the type of job that you're getting, how much you're being
Mhm.
paid,
Mhm.
the type of house that you're buying, where you're living, how much money does your spouse make? Like all of these societal points, these milestones are these like checkpoints that you're not really getting to decide. And I feel like once I recognize that I get to choose what it means to feel, I get to choose what it means to be successful, what that looks and feels like in my own life based on my standards. A lot of stress was able to be alleviated around what's next for me or what is my career.
Wow.
That
Wow.
growth isn't linear. Career growth isn't linear. I mean, I think for a lot of millennials, we do many, many jobs. A lot of us, kind of shapeshift how we show up
Mhm.
in the social professional world. Um, we're multifaceted in that way. And so
Mm.
I think like what professional life is going to look like for me compared to my parents is going to be very different. And that's totally okay. Um, when I was a new mom, I still felt like I had to adhere to the standards of having a super clean house before my parents would come to visit and having everything be perfect. And, I put this pressure on myself to have every avenue of life be, you know, um, perfect in some sense of the word. And so again, my understanding of what ex, um, acceptable looks and feels like in my life is different. I still like to
Mhm.
have it, but I recognize like if my parents come, they're not looking at whether my baseboards are dusted. They're not looking at like whether my kids' rooms are spotless. And even if they are, like it doesn't matter.
Right.
Um,
Right.
that's none of those things can fall by the wayside, and it doesn't deter or take away from the good person that I know that I am and the good mom that I am. And something
Mm.
that I also have to remind myself of, and my husband also reminds me of and reminds himself of. These are things that we say to each other when we're having tough parenting days, is that good parents don't worry about whether, or bad parents don't worry about whether or not they're good. Only good
Mhm.
parents worry about whether or not they're doing things well enough. Um,
Mhm.
so, that's also kind of just a reality or a grounding moment for me when I feel like, oh my God, is my impatience going to cause my kids all this like generational trauma? Like when I start to really get into my head about my success of the day or things that I'm working on, um, and how that's impacting my kids. That even if you have a great childhood, there will still be things that you take away that like your parents frustrate you about, or that you feel annoyed by, or that like
Mhm.
oh, so many of those things are also out of our control. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think just reconciling like perfection doesn't exist, period, in life. Definitely doesn't exist in parenthood. And that
No.
I choose what worthiness looks and feels like in my life is so, so important.
Oh, like truly hit my soul at such a level. And I think anyone listening, absolutely, this idea around re-establishing what success looks like and worthiness, I think is beautiful. And I think when that's paired with motherhood or parenthood, I think that role really challenges all of those thoughts
Mhm.
or expectations.
Yes, expectations. Absolutely.
Ugh. Um, what do you or yes, if you were to sum up parenting in one word, what would it be and why?
Oh, God. I feel like I need to pick a good one, like a really good word, because messy is probably one that people say all the
Mm.
time. Because it is messy. Yeah, I mean, I think that that's probably true. Like
Yes,
it can
I
be
think that's a great
literally,
word.
it is literally messy. It can be very
Mhm.
emotionally messy.
Yes.
Um, yeah, parenting changes you. It changes your partner,
Mm.
your spouse, changes your
Mhm.
marriage. When things
Mhm.
change at a very foundational, fundamental level of your life, everything on top of that has to change. And yeah, it is going to be messy until things find a settling point. There is no new normal. I think that is something that people talk about all the time is like,
Wow.
you have a baby, you have kids, and then you find your new normal. That's not true.
Mhm.
It's every day
Mhm.
is a variable. And just when you think you get comfortable in a season, it changes. And so
Oof.
this need to just be flexible and bendy and bouncy is, I think, really, really important, because that is the only way you can deal with the mess. Because if it's not you managing challenges with your child or your kids, it's going to be dealing with your internal challenges. It's going to be dealing with
Mm.
changes and challenges in your marriage. And those are going to be seasonal too.
Our lives, please.
Please, necessary.
Please necessary. What is one parenting myth that you wish would go away?
Oh, man. Well, I think that the one I just mentioned about how you'll find a new normal, I think is a total myth. Um,
Mm.
because that to
Yes.
me suggests that there's a settling point of where things become a plateau, and it's never like that. Um,
Mhm.
trying to think if there's anything specific. I mean, I think there's so many. Like there's so
I
many
know.
topics where like I'll come across them on social media and I'm like, oh, that is ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense. Um, yeah, I remember reading something. This was a few years ago, where it was a post on Instagram. It said something about how like you should work on healing yourself before you have children, so that they don't grow up in a world or a household where you're constantly having to you know work on yourself. Like, that you should be prepared for having kids by dealing with your own stuff first. And I think that's like such a ridiculous way to think about life in general, but children are our catalyst for
Mm.
change. They are the clearest mirrors that we will ever look into in our life. They are the ones that will show us exactly what we need to be working on. Um, I am thankful for those hard lessons that I've had to learn through parenting, through being a mom. Because I think it's a lot easier to go through life feeling defensive around your own shortcomings when it comes to your peers or your partner. Um, bringing them up versus it coming from an innocent child who is learning how to navigate a very complicated world. And um, I think in some ways, like you have to do that work alongside your children. That it is so, parenting is so much about leading by example, but also that leading by
Mm-hmm.
example has so much to do with taking responsibility, apologizing,
Mm-hmm.
showing up when it's hard, um, doing the inner work, being transparent about your boundaries. You know, I just I look at previous generations and like again, like our parents and our grandparents and how authority figures like parents were supposed to just know everything and that you couldn't question their intelligence, you couldn't
Mm-hmm.
question their boundaries. I encourage my kids to question when we say, no, we're not going to do this, or not right now, or this isn't a
Mm-hmm.
choice for you. They don't have to be happy about it. They're still
Mm-hmm.
going to respect what the decision is, but they don't have to be happy about it. They can ask us why, and we will give them an explanation. This is why we made this
Mm-hmm.
decision, versus, well,
Mm-hmm.
I'm the mom, and I said so you should just listen to me. So part of that, like learning with our kids, is I think what creates a strong sense of trust, and a strong sense of family identity, which is so, so important in a world that is so dissolved and boundaryless and available, that helping to keep important others of communication with your children, I think really is established through those moments of transparency, those moments of learning and making mistakes with your kids, and um, helping them to see that like you're also a human having a hard time, or that you're also
Right.
learning and that you don't always do it right, and that's okay. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I think those are things that make a big difference in our life, as parents, and certainly I hope in our kids' life when they look back and think about their childhood, but also as they're in their own journeys of, you know, how we speak to our children. The example that we set for them is ultimately going to be the internal voice that they speak to themselves in
Mm-hmm.
as well.
And even, um, literally, I have had goosebumps so many times, and this is one of those times because the inner healing around having those little mirrors around you is priceless. There's nothing more. There's not a bigger opportunity to heal and grow than through that process. And I think you articulated it just absolutely lovely because it is so powerful. And oftentimes I think the biggest lesson is in life is just through that whole act of bringing these little souls to the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where are you crushing it?
I'm really good juggling the day-to-day chaos, if I do say so myself. Um, that I think has come from just being desensitized over the last nearly 12 years of being thrown into the pit. I say that with
Oh
a
my God.
smile, but just because our life is so variable with Matt's job when
Mm,
he's home and he's not home, and having
right.
to just um pivot. Yeah,
Mm,
that's kind of been my word for parenting through the season of life, is like learning to pivot. Okay, if this isn't going to work out, if this timeline doesn't make sense, this plan falls through, how are we going to pivot? Like, it's not about
mhm.
having a set concrete plan B, plan C. Like the old me would have been like, this has to be set in stone. And if it doesn't work out this way, I'm going to completely spiral and flip out. And if plan B doesn't work out in the way that I had already planned it, then I'm also going to spiral about that. So learning to just pivot and roll with it,
Mhm.
it's been
Mhm.
such a good life lesson for me that I could have only ever learned by kind of having my hands being put up to the fire.
Wow.
And it's necessary because there are a lot of times where I'm like having to figure things out on the fly, and I'm pretty good at managing chaos and crisis, I know that I am the person people come to during a crisis. I know that I'm really
Mhm.
good at being made clear and grounded during times that are turbulent. Um, and at the same time, it can also be really heavy having to be
Yeah.
the emotional bedrock for your family, for, people in your close
Yeah.
network. So it's an honor and it's a privilege, but it's also really hard. But I think I've become really good at adjusting my life to be able to work through things that are thrown at me or that change
Mhm.
frequently, and not completely spiral out of control. So yeah, I think that is one area where I'm teaching it. I would also say,
Ah,
if I give myself another compliment,
can you
that
please?
yeah, absolutely, I deserve it. I've
Yes,
worked really,
100%.
really hard at taking care of my mental health, in particular over the last 2 years. And it has been
Okay,
a
tell me this.
priority.
Okay,
Yeah.
tell me
So
this.
I went back to therapy and I've been in and out of therapy my whole life. Like I am an anxious
Mhm.
girly, anxiety through life. It is just part of who I am. Um, However, I think I reached a place a couple of years ago. And here's the thing. The world has changed so dramatically in the last 5, 6 years, right? We are in a very
Yes.
different world than we were.
Yes.
And raising parents in
Yes.
this world, raising kids in this world is bananas. My parents always
Bananas.
think like, I can't imagine raising kids in this world. And I'm like, yeah, I'm with you.
Right.
It's crazy. Because it feels like things are always working against you. You feel like you're working
Yeah.
at this age, like my kid, my oldest wants a phone. She doesn't have a phone yet. So I'm constantly working against like her peers that have phones, and then there's social media, and then there's YouTube, and then they're just
Right.
exposed to so much more than they were. The world is a different place.
Yeah.
So all of those dynamics, and then also wanting to take care of myself and my own mental health and, you know, caring for myself in my marriage and wanting to be, you know, the most available, best version of myself for my partner, for myself, for my kids, like
Yeah.
all of that. I can't do that on my own. And yeah, I think I just recognized that for a long time, anxiety was the bus driver in my life, and I was simply a passenger. And I didn't want to
Mhm.
live like that anymore. I didn't want to
Mhm.
feel like it wasn't about being out of control, but it was this sense of, um, I don't know which direction I'm going. Everything feels like there's
Mhm.
a black seer. And that's
Mhm.
not a way to live. That's not a way that I want to show up in my marriage. It's not a way that I want to show up as a mom. Um, no, but I also, my oldest has ADHD and OCD. And so, navigating a lot of that
Okay.
neurodiversity as well, like has its challenges. And so I just wanted to feel like if I could take care of myself and give myself the internal support and understanding that I needed, that it would be easier to radiate that same level of support and compassion in other areas of my life. And that has definitely
Wow.
been true. And it's not necessarily choosing myself over my kids or my husband or anything else in my life. It's actually choosing myself alongside of them.
Mm.
And this last year, we lost my father-in-law. So grief has been like a big part of our
Mhm.
story in our household. And so, I know that I wouldn't have probably been able to navigate a lot of that as well as I feel like we have as a family or as well as I have as an individual had it not been for the tools that I've learned to implement in my life over the last 2 years, just being in consistent therapy. Um, and I think therapy isn't about becoming a different person. It's really just about practicing doing things in a different way. And that's been a helpful
Mm.
reminder for me. It's been a helpful kind of mantra that I just remind my kids of that when we make changes, we're practicing something new. It's not about doing it right
Yeah.
initially. That we're safe to make mistakes. I'm safe to make mistakes in my house. My kids are safe to make mistakes in our home. We have to just practice doing things in a different way until it feels more comfortable. And that doesn't mean that we're changing who we are. It just means that we're allowing parts of ourselves that maybe felt disempowered, that felt unseen, invalidated, that felt scared to find a little bit more leverage to be in a healthier place on the bus again and not having anxiety driving the bus. Um, so yeah, therapy has been monumental, life changing for me. And I think I had to be ready to accept doing a lot of that work and also
Yeah.
taking responsibility in areas of my life that was easy to deflect on other people
Hmm.
previously. Um, yeah, I'm a big advocate.
One, it's so huge that you are doing that. Thank you for sharing because I think what is so inspiring is that we are continuing on this growth path forward. The world is so wild. We've never been here. And the more forward we go, I feel like the wilder it potentially will get. And so you just like saying that and having and giving yourself grace and permission to heal and move on. I mean, it's so powerful. Thank you. I mean, it's so inspirational.
No, yeah, and I think remembering too that if you seek therapy, it doesn't mean that there's something necessarily wrong with you. You
Oh,
know,
totally.
I I always struggle to be able to see myself clearly. I feel like I see others very clearly. And so
Yes.
therapy for me has felt to see myself a little more clearly in ways that perhaps were not as obvious previously. And I think that has given me a realm to be more compassionate towards myself um, instead of being always so hard on ourselves. Because if we're hard on ourselves, we're going to be hard on others. And it's not that we need to be
Yeah.
easy or soft on everyone all the time, but I think it's easier to to express more authentic empathy and compassion when we also feel free enough to do that back to ourselves.
You really are crushing it.
Thank you.
Unless I missed something, so please expand because I'm pretty sure I could talk to you forever, and I kind of want to. Like, can
We could
we
talk
do
for
like a part
hours.
2 or something?
Thanks for listening to It's a Circus. If today's episode made you feel a little less alone, share it with a friend who might need it too. We are building something amazing at the Turner Brothers Circus, an entire space designed for parents to find connection, laughter, and support. I'd love for you to be a part of it. Remember, you're doing better than you think. Stay grounded, stay real, and embrace that beautiful mess. And as always, the show must go on.